Now, I'm going to talk about global variables. Well, this topic comes hand in hand with functions. It's also related to scopes. What does all of this mean? Well, remember, we can define functions. So define func1, and it could do some stuff. Then define func2. It could do some stuff, and then I have my main. Okay, which is also doing some stuff. Now, if we create a variable here, this variable will be deleted after execution. Okay, same thing here. This is another variable, same scenario. Now in main, this won't happen. If I created a variable here, it will stay. So I can say that the scope of this variable here is only function1. And the scope of this variable here is only function2. It means this variable here is alive only as long as function2 is executing. By the end of execution of function, this variable will die. Okay? Now, what can we do in order to create a variable that is accessible by everybody? Let's say I want a variable that is accessible by main, by function2, by function1, by everyone. At the top, you could define something called a global variable. Okay? So if you define a variable just at top, let's say variable here, it's equal to, doesn't really matter, to an empty list, let's say. Now, each function can have access to it and actually modify it. It doesn't die, it stays here. It is there forever. Okay, so, and this is called the global variable. This is called the global. However, in order for this global variable to be accessible, let's say by this function1 right here, we need to write it as follows. We need to write a global var. If you don't write global, it won't understand that you are referring to this one. Okay, so if you just write variable like that, as in here, this won't actually modify the one right here. Only if you write it like that, like this way, you will be able to modify it here. Okay, so it's a condition that you add the global keyword inside the function in order to modify it. Now you don't have to do that in the main. Now let us apply this in an example. So we have implemented this example previously, and we had a problem that we defined 3 databases inside the function, and when we tried to add them and print them, we printed them correctly, but adding 2 names resulted in only adding one of them. If we run this again, as you remember, we said that we tried to add John, we added it, but when we tried to add Mr. Hamsho, John was gone because the databases are defined inside the functions, which will die actually once this function is done executing. What we need to do is cut all of these, put them here. Now those are global variables. And let's cut all of these and just put them outside. Okay, let us try to run this. Things are much better. Now we have John and Mr. Hamsho in every database. That's great. So right now this database scope is global and everybody can access it. That's why you don't just put variables inside a function unless they are temporary variables to help the function do its job. Now, I have talked about global. why didn't I mention global inside the function? Remember, I said that you need the global keyword in order to modify any of those that are global. Well, since here we are not really changing the variable value from its root and only modifying an object, or let's say we are only modifying it for now, well, we don't need to add a global, but I want you to observe this closely. Let's say that I want database1 to equal to only that name. Okay, I want to delete everything. Will this work? Will I keep everything that I have done? Will all the names be kept? Or will they be replaced? Remember, my goal here when I do this is to replace it. I mean, I want to delete everything and just add the names I am putting here, right? So the first print should generate me all Johns. So right here, when we execute this, all of those should be John, and then when I execute this, it will be overwritten, and all of them should be Mr. Hamsho, right? Because, bear with me, because look here, add to database John, modify database, and make its value only equal to a list that equals John, same here, same here. Next, add database, add Mr. Hamsho. Again, overwrite the whole database and just make it equal to Mr. Hamsho, Mr. Hamsho, Mr. Hamsho. So if I print those, I will get Mr. Hamsho's only. Let's see what's going to happen. As you can see, the value did not change at all. See, it's no John, no Mr. Hamsho, it's just stayed as it is intact. Now, in order to be able to modify a value of a global variable from its root, like change it entirely, you need to do global. So you need to say global d1, then say global db2, then say global db3. Now what you have done is you have linked this db here, linked this db here, and linked this one here to the global ones. Now, if I run it, I should get all Mr. Hamshos. And as you can see, I got all Mr. Hamshos. And by that, we have learned what is a scope and what is a global variable. Just a quick summarization. If you want to only modify a variable like appending to a list, you don't need to do this global. Only if you want to change the variable from its root.